Officiating in the Georgia-Texas game was a joke. Not even that they got the call wrong. I've had a huge issue for quite a while with the mechanisms of college football officiating, but officiating became a really big issue in the Georgia-Texas game. I know most of you saw it because you were watching live. If you didn't see it, you probably saw the clips of the trash raining down on the field and stuff like that. But if you didn't really know what happened was defensive pass interference got called on Texas. And Colin is showing you the play right here. So there's the throw from Beck, and it's DPI. And so the call was, boom, DPI. So it's a Texas interception that ends up getting overturned. Well, then they throw a lot of trash on the field, and that, of course, halts play. And what happens when play is stopped in a stadium is they start running replays on the big board. And those officials aren't blind. Well, they're not supposed to be. And they look at that board just like everyone else. Well, then they go and they decide they're going to overturn that thing. And it just so happens there was not defensive pass interference on this play. So the turnover is going to stand. And you know what? When you go back and watch the play, they probably ended up with the right call. So you say to yourself, Josh, how could you say that the officiating mechanism screwed up here? How is it broken if they ended up getting the call right? Well, couple of things. The first thing I want to do is I want to have Director Colin play Kirby Smart after the game. Here's what the head coach at Georgia said. I'll tell you what I think.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say and not say, so I won't comment because I want to respect the wishes of the SEC office. But I will say that now we've set a precedent that if you throw a bunch of stuff on the field and endanger athletes, that you got a chance to get your call reversed. And that's unfortunate because to me that's dangerous. That's not what we want. And that's not criticizing officials. That's what happened.
It's not criticizing officials. It's just what happened. Yeah, he'll probably get fined for that. That's what happens, by the way. When you tell the truth about college football officiating, you get fined. Shame on folks for telling the truth. My question is always this. When a flag gets thrown for something like pass interference, offensive, defensive, I don't care. When a flag gets thrown for holding, and then it gets picked up, my question is always, well, what generated the flag to begin with? If you throw a flag for defensive pass interference, as was the case here, I don't care if folks throw trash on the field or not. If you pick that flag up, you're going to have to tell me what it was you saw that made you reach in your pocket and throw the flag to begin with. Because if it didn't happen, then there was nothing that ever occurred that should have warranted the flag being thrown. It's not an inadvertent whistle. It's not something that's in your mouth and occasionally, whoop. It's not that. You had to take your hand, reach in your pocket, and throw a flag. So what'd you throw it for if the thing you threw it for didn't happen? That's the first question I always have. This is a hard job. Officiating, umpiring, it's a very hard job. There are high stakes on this stuff too. That's why the folks doing it ought to be full-time employees and have to answer for it. Because, Kirby's got to answer when he screws up. Sark's got to answer when he screws up. For that matter, a 19-year-old tight end has to answer to the media when they screw up. But somehow, one of the most important mechanisms in this entire thing that we call college football is allowed to just get wrapped in bubble wrap and you never have to hear from them. The league afterwards, 24, 48, 72 hours sometimes, they may issue a statement, or the following Monday they may tell you, hey, sorry, we know you lost a game, you may get fired. We just want you to know we screwed up and you should have won. And we're not going to give you the win. We're not going to actually change anything, but we just thought you should know. Like it's a Morgan Wallen song or something. The second thing is, you are kidding yourself if you don't think the climate in that building had anything to do with them overturning that call last night. It was embarrassing to watch. It had to be just enraging for the administration at Georgia, for the team at Georgia, for the coaching staff. Didn't determine the outcome of the game, fortunately. But it's one thing getting the call right. Get it right the first time. If it didn't happen, don't throw the flag. But if you threw it, man, and then this happens, and then you sit there and watch that video board, and then you decide, you know what? On further review, these people seem pretty pissed. Let's overturn the call. Well, you ought to be sitting with them then. You have no business officiating a college football game. So I will go back to the same thing I went to when officials probably screwed South Carolina out of a win against LSU. Yesterday, I'm in Knoxville. I'm in Neyland Stadium, and I watched Boo Carter start mouthing off of Kendrick Law. And then Kendrick Law hauls off and pushes him, punches him, whatever you want to call that. Law gets flagged, And I personally got no problem with law getting flagged. I got a problem with it not being offsetting fouls. Not the most egregious call in the world, but I'm sitting there thinking, man, that's a pretty consequential flag to throw there. And so the whole time, I know I'd screw up if I were officiating. That's why I don't do it, first off. I'd screw up, but you know what I should have to do? I ought to have to answer for it. Like I said, coaches, coordinators, they got to answer for it. Players have to answer for it. I'm pretty sure that Quinn Ewers had to talk to reporters after that game. I was at Bama. I sat there and watched Jalen Milroe have the worst game I've ever seen him have. He has to walk in the room. He has to talk to reporters. Officials, nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. You know why? Well, we can't put those officials through that. They're not full-time employees. Whose fault is that? Who's make them full-time employees? I think that's the answer. And also, remember, we did this segment a few weeks ago where we had a lot of anonymous officials reach out to us, and they confirmed that, hey, Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State made a complaint the other day, and he's kind of right. There's no standardized officiating mechanism in the sport. There's supposed to be, but there's not. There's a way they do it in the ACC, and it's kind of different than the SEC, kind of different than the Big 12, and it's just a joke. It is a multi-billion-dollar sport with a nickel and dime officiating and enforcement mechanism, and it never should be that way. If you recreated the sport today, you would never build it this way. It's the way it is because it's the way it's been done, and I don't know if you've paid attention throughout history, but it turns out the way it's been done forever is not always the best course of action for something to continue the way it's always been done. And I'm all for tradition. So sometimes it's okay. It's okay that they paint the end zones at Neyland the same way they've done for 100 years. That's a good application of that's the way it's always been done. But officiating, being the joke that it is in college football, it shouldn't be just because it's the way it's always been done.